Good evening and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Joshua Solomon, and my co-host, the Honorable J.P. Marzullo, is out on special assignment. He's at the debates tonight over at New England College. We'll get a full report from him next week. As always, Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades is sponsored by the Wilson Hill Pistol Club, 1732 Lakeshore Road, right here in Manchester. It is the oldest sports shooting club in the state. We have open enrollment, open membership at the moment, and the membership meetings are the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m., 1732 Lakeshore Road. So that's right after this show. I will see you there. And if you're watching online, you can see our website, wilsonhillpistol.org. You can go there and you can send us a message and you can get more information. Thank you very much. And tonight we have Hloolie Noveletsky running for Congress in CD1.
CD1. Thank you, Josh, for having me.
How you doing, Hloolie?
I'm wonderful. I'm glad to be here.
So this race is pretty crowded right now on the GOP side. So there's six, seven of you?
Yeah, but some of them are the eternal runners, so they're really only about four of us, really.
Yeah. And who are the four that you consider your... Myself,
Joe Kelly.
Joe, yep.
Russell, and Chris Wright.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. So, so tell me about who you are, where you're from, and what led you here. Because the stories that we get from candidates about what made them say, you know what, it's time for me to leave that behind, and well, not necessarily leave my life behind,
right.
But it's time for me to stand up because no one else is going to do it.
Correct.
So tell us about yourself.
So I've never been in politics, never wanted to be in politics, never aspired to be in politics. I'm a business owner. I own Novel Ironworks, which is a structural steel fabrication company. I'm second generation. I also have an erection company. We do structural steel for infrastructure. So we'll do a simple beam for a house, or we've done the skyscrapers in Boston,
really?
Throughout New England. I'm also a psychiatric and a geriatric nurse practitioner. And I've done dementia care.
That's interesting. I have a different view. So
yeah.
You have a family business.
Business.
Ironworks, and you didn't. It sounds like you didn't initially go into the
Correct.
Family business.
Correct.
You took a different path and then turned back.
I turned back, and it keeps me balanced. When I worked in dementia care and end of life for most of my career, so it keeps you balanced. We didn't get the job, but nobody died. It puts life in perspective for me. And I cared for people with dementia at home for many years. And I'm also a veteran. I spent 8 years in the Army Reserve Nurse Corps and 2 years in the New Hampshire National Guard. But I never anticipated going into politics. I think like many of us, sitting home watching the TV, I was getting angry at the dysfunction, the total dysfunction down in DC. And I thought, either I have to accept this and be quiet, or step up and try and be part of the solution. And people who know me know I'm not good at being quiet. So I decided to step up and be part of the solution. I have grandchildren. I can't say, good luck to you guys, I'm out of here. I have to try and make it better. Because I really believe in the American dream. My grandmother came here, we're Jewish. My grandmother came here in 1913 to escape the pogroms. And she loved this country. And she taught me to love this country and the opportunities that it affords you. So my grandmother came here in 1913 and escaped the pogroms. My stepmother was Israeli, and growing up I got the opportunity to spend a couple summers in Israel. And I remember very vividly sitting around the table at my grandmother's one family dinner, and I said, I love Israel. She goes, no, you love this country. This country's been good to us. So she taught me to love this country because of the opportunities and because of how good it's been to us. And then my dad was a Merrill's Marauder. So,
really?
Yeah. So Merrill's Marauder. So he taught me to fight for this country, stand up. He said, if it's easy, everyone would do it. So you have to sometimes do the hard work.
Right.
And he said, if everyone likes you, you're doing something wrong. So you got to draw a line. You have to have an opinion. You have to say what's right or wrong. And when you draw that line in the sand, there are always going to be people on the other side.
Right.
So I think between my grandmother teaching me how to love this country and my father teaching me to stand up and fight for this country, I decided to stand up because I do love this country. I believe in the dream. I believe in the opportunities. The opportunities that I've been afforded as a woman, I want to make sure that those opportunities are still here for the next generations.
Okay. So is there something specific? I mean, you're a nurse. One topic that we've really beat to death over the last few years is this business of lockdowns and COVID and shots and whatnot. And it seems like what came out of that were a lot of varying opinions about how that entire process was handled. You know, we were in this lockdown mode for almost 2 years, and we're still being propagandized with the latest COVID shot, right? We're still being hit with that. But what came out of it was fractions in both parties. Even you had Democrats saying, "What is this? Why are we doing this?" And then we had Republicans, and I've made no bones about this. I wasn't entirely pleased with the way that Governor Sununu handled it, right? There were some things that he did, some things that he locked down that he absolutely should not have. And so it coming out of COVID, a lot of my guests are saying, hey, that was part of what got me going, because people just are not handling this and they're not seeing through the garbage. So what, is there something in particular that hit you?
No, I don't think it was the COVID so much.
I was just using that as an example.
No, because during COVID, I actually went back into the nursing homes. I felt it was my obligation. And I did some work in the nursing homes. But I really think it's the dysfunction down in D.C. That we're unable to get anything done, that we have destabilized the whole world with our weakness on the international stage. We have wars in the Ukraine, the Middle East. We're at risk, in the Asia Pacific. It's the fear that we have lost our standing on the world stage, and that we have lost our ability to care for our people here, because we have opened up this illegal immigration that is beyond comprehension, that we have incentivized such illegal immigration to the detriment of caring for our own people, our elderly, our homeless.
California is offering no interest mortgages for illegal aliens.
So a town in Maine put up...
Why are these things even legal? Why? That's something I want Congress to do, is to make it illegal for individual states to pass out driver's licenses.
Yes.
So if you as a... Well, see, that's where you get to the states' rights types things. If a state can issue a driver's license, right, then the feds shouldn't be able to tell the state what the rules are, because different states have different rules.
But we just had the SAVE Act.
But what I'm saying is what you can do at the federal level is say, if you make this legal in your state, it won't be recognized outside of your state, right? If you give a driver's license to an illegal alien, that is not valid outside of your state, period, end of story. So what you can do is you can make rules at the federal level that prevent that from seeping over the state line.
But we shouldn't be giving driver's license to illegals for a couple of reasons. They
absolutely not.
Shouldn't be voting in our elections. I own a structural steel fabrication company in Greenland, right? And I put a beautiful new entrance in. This was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Stone walls. The next complex over from me is another company. I won't say the name, but they get a lot of deliveries, tractor trailers. First time I put my wall up, the first year, it was taken out at least 4 times, because the driver would come in. We have it written on our entrance, Novel Ironworks. The driver would come in, not speak English, didn't know which entrance they were at, and couldn't even read the address. So they would have to come out and make that turn. They shouldn't be having. They shouldn't be having.
That's the first thing on a driver's test is you need to speak English and read English. That's what all of our signs are in.
No. And a tractor trailer, a loaded tractor trailer. We're not talking a scooter.
So they have a CDL. A class, right? So I mean,
these are real issues.
they are,
These are real issues.
and that's here in New
And
Hampshire.
we need to. I don't know where the driver came from, so I don't know where their license came
But
from.
the issue is here in New
yes,
Hampshire,
correct,
regardless of
correct.
where it came from.
Correct.
Right?
We should stop paying NGOs, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. Stop giving them the money to incentivize all this illegal immigration.
Didn't we just pass something about sanctuary cities?
In New Hampshire.
Yeah.
No
so
sanctuary.
there's no sanctuary city. We need to have the state level override of any municipal policies like that. So.
Yeah. But we need to stop paying NGOs, because don't forget, federal government doesn't make money. They take money. They take your money, they take my money, they take your money, they take your tax dollars. That's the federal money that they then give us very generously back a portion of. That's taxpayer money. It should not be going to incentivizing illegal immigration. And as a nurse, and I've done volunteer work over in Sierra Leone. I've done a lot of volunteer work as a nurse. That's the one thing about nursing. It's my passion. It's a great profession, and I've gotten to do some really amazing work with it. And I went over to Sierra Leone around 2009-10, working with the victims of the Blood Diamond War. I worked in the amputee camps, and then I worked in one of the small little villages, working with some of the women who had been held as sex slaves. And to think that we're incentivizing that. The women and children who are coming over here and being trafficked, we're incentivizing that.
Well, it was just last week or the week before. A conservative journalist exposed it over a year ago and started asking the questions of the Border Patrol and ICE and all that. Where are these unaccompanied minors going? And what he found when he started tracing, and this was over a year ago, maybe even longer, what he found when he started tracing this was that they were being processed and then they were being released to family members who were already in the United States. And he found that they weren't really family members, that these were trafficking organizations, where ICE and the Border Patrol are actually taking children who are crossing the border, who are being walked across the border with non-parents, are then being released to family members, and ICE and Border Patrol are complicit in the trafficking. And so it was just last week or the week before, 30,000 unaccompanied minors are now unaccounted for, right? ICE is now admitting that they lost track of it.
I thought the number was 100.
Maybe
it was larger.
Maybe it was 300. It was
I think it was
300,000. I'm
forget.
sorry.
Yeah.
I undercut it. I'm sorry. The one time I didn't over-exaggerate. It's 300,000 are missing. ICE lost track of it, and it's because of the policies coming from Washington.
And I don't think it's the ICE agents and Border Patrol agents. They want to do their job.
I don't think so either.
Right. They're
I think they're
hardworking
all frustrated. I think, but
demoralized.
they're being handed down policies and being told that they're going to go to jail if they don't follow the rules. You need to release that person, or we're going to put you in cuffs.
Right.
And that's what's happening. But 300,000, and we've got the United States government is complicit in this trafficking operation.
I mean, because we know.
I don't think people realize it. It's this hidden underworld that I don't think people realize. People who are voting in this country don't understand that.
No.
Well, people who watch my show understand it, right? And
you're preaching to the choir.
Exactly. But the left-brained folks in this country they want to be shielded from it. I think it's the only reason you can't see it. It's the only reason somebody can't see it is because they don't want to see it. That's my feeling. So,
and it's like the homeless issue. I don't want to see it, so I don't look at it. But we have a real issue.
But some of these issues are actually, we can trace them back to failed government policies.
Absolutely.
We can absolutely trace a lot of the drug problems to failed government policies, and that leads to the homelessness. It leads to the joblessness. It leads to all of that.
And when you look at the COVID policy, so I think that really led to our mental health issues that we're having. I mean, people are isolated.
We were diving down into that problem long before
Correct.
that, but it
got worse.
definitely exasperated
Yes,
it.
because people were isolated, and just that isolation just put them into anxiety and depression.
Well, that was one of the things that I have a problem with Governor Sununu over, is the very first thing he did was he bought into this lockdown business. All right, and I'll admit, early on we were all scared. We didn't know how severe this was going to be, how bad it was going to be, and this idea of locking people down and not going to work and staying home. But what he did was constitutionally illegal, and that is he shut down churches. He said you can't go to church anymore, you can't congregate, right? And the right to assemble, to freely assemble, is the First Amendment. It is the First Amendment right? The right to assemble and free speech and all of that business. That peaceful assembly was taken away. And the problem is, when you talk about addiction and you talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, and where do all of these addiction centers meet? They meet in the basements of churches. And when you tell a church that they have to shut down, you've now taken away the support system for a large majority of our mental health folks, right? You're taking away all of their group therapy, you're taking away all of it. And just by shutting down the churches, you're taking away about 95% of the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in this state, right? And everybody lost their support system, and we saw a rise of suicides. We saw a rise of attempts, but that was one of the things that I had a problem with. But COVID exasperated it, and the policies that came out of it made it so much worse.
I would say the policies made it worse, but it was a crisis that we had never seen before.
I don't disagree
Right.
with that. And like I said,
think,
early on, we were all afraid, and there wasn't enough information. But as we moved on, we started to get information, and we started to get treatments, and we started to understand the real impact a little bit more. Right now, we're coming out with studies that say the mRNA shot itself killed more than 6 million people, a direct.
I haven't seen that.
Right, and so they're doing these studies, and they're saying, okay, let's take the bias out of the study, and that's a study that came out about a week and a half ago. Right, we implemented a whole bunch of stuff. I think we just went way overboard, and again, some of that is because we just didn't know. But as we started to understand, we didn't have the right people in place to think, okay, we need to back off on that policy because we've gone overboard. Now we need to back off on this one, and that's where I want someone who can think for themselves and not just listen to Dr. Fauci and think that, his word is gospel. Because a lot of people don't remember where Fauci came from, right? He's been the head of the NIH since the 80s. And we had another epidemic in the 80s that no one had ever seen before. And it was HIV.
I was working as a nurse then, yeah.
Well, one of the things that happened in that area was there was a drug company, I believe its name was Pfizer, that had come up with a cancer treatment in the late 70s that turned out to not work. But they had spent, in today's world, billions of dollars on this cancer drug. They had no evidence whatsoever, but the NIH, headed by Fauci, decided that they were going to take this cancer drug that had no monetary value to it and try it on HIV-positive foster children, where the state had control over forcing these foster children to take this experimental drug, and it began to kill them. So what you had in 1988 and 1999, you had protesters with signs, Fauci's a killer, Fauci's a killer. This happened in the 80s because he went and vouched for a drug with no evidence to back it up, and it failed.
See, I don't know
And
that
here we
story.
are seeing this again under COVID, and people are forgetting. People don't remember these things. It's just like the CrowdStrike thing that we were talking about earlier. You have to pay attention because these names of people and companies will come up again. If something bad has happened, if they're not removed, it will happen again. We're seeing history repeat itself. But anyway, that's me going off on my conspiracy theory. My
okay.
guests know my conspiracy theory, but I knew Fauci for what he was from the beginning, and you have to think for yourself and not just go along with it. And I want my politicians to do that because I didn't see that happening. I didn't see that critical thinking coming out of Governor Sununu when it came to locking down everything.
Well, I think we locked down initially because everyone was fearful. It was
Again,
something new.
and I've said it over and over on previous shows. I was one of those people who didn't understand at first either. But after 3 or 4 months, we started getting that information, and that's when I want people to start acting on it. And okay, you took away our freedoms, and we said okay, but it's now time to start thinking about critically about what's really good for everybody as opposed to what's good for optics.
And I don't know how well, I mean, how strongly they were enforced, some of those restrictions here in New Hampshire. We were better off than any other state in New England.
We were definitely much better off from our surrounding states.
And I don't think we'll ever do this again.
But there were actually GOP states that did worse than us, I feel.
Worse with restrictions, you mean?
Yes, yeah. So, I do agree that we were in good shape. But as a whole, as a country, I did not see that critical thinking coming out of Washington. I just saw go along, get along, fear. Do what you're told, and we're going to make a few $1 billion at Pfizer. So, anyway.
And I know the research on the masks was known before, the cloth masks.
Well, that was the first thing I got on. I mean, even before the lockdown, I said, no, these masks are like chain link fences and mosquitoes.
Right.
And so.
And that data was out there.
It was out there, and that data was on 3M's website. It was on 3M's website in the very beginning. I looked up at the N95 mask, all the details and what it can and can't filter out, and I made links to those. Guess what got scrubbed from the internet? It got scrubbed within about 4 or 5 days. But I had that information. I saw it. It was freely available for anybody who wanted to look for it. But then when it started coming out that these things weren't effective, all of the material on the internet that backed up the fact that they weren't effective got scrubbed. I could see it. I was watching it with my own eyes. So anyway, let's get back to the CD1 race. Like I said, we've beat that part to death on this show multiple times, but it's that type of critical thinking that I think I get let down, even from people that I voted for. It's like, wait a minute, you're not looking at the big picture. You're listening to your aides, and you're not having that critical thinking that I want you to have. And that's what I'm hoping out of the next person I vote for.
Well, I hope you're satisfied.
So anyway, we got on that subject because I did ask, what prompted you? What is there something? What's your mission when you go down there? Obviously, everyone's going to say, "Hey, I'm going to serve the New Hampshire folks. I'm going to make sure that the any new taxes and we're going to try and send as much of those resources back to New Hampshire where it belongs." Is there something specific that you're in on?
I think it piggybacks off of something you were saying about being critical thinking, but I think that we have bullies on all sides that have stifled open communication and dialogue, discourse. And people are afraid to speak up because they get attacked so severely. And I feel that if I speak up on what I think is right, it'll give you courage to speak up. And then the next person. If I take the hits, and then maybe you'll feel better about speaking up because I'm standing in front of you for the bully.
I think that's true. I mean, and we see that in some of the politicians from other states who do that, right?
I don't want to be the one that's standing in front of the camera saying, look at me, There are some really hard-working people down there that we don't see every day because they're doing the work, they're rolling up the sleeves. And I had the opportunity to meet one of them when I went down to D.C. Out of Iowa, Marionette Miller Meeks. They're for the right reason, doing the hard work, but not making her 5 minutes of fame. I've had my 5 minutes of fame. It's not worth it. You have your 5 minutes of fame.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. When I see somebody get elected, I feel, and I've mentioned this on the show before, I feel like folks who get elected, they're like, I'm going to go to the State House, or I'm going to go down to D.C., and I'm going to introduce bills that do this, this, and this, and I'm going to make my mark. I'm going to go after it, right? I'm going to pass this bill. I'm going to get everybody on board with me. And they're looking to make their mark. And I want just the opposite, right? We're being told, we're told all the time, oh, it's a deadlock. Oh, they're filibustering. Oh, we can't get anything done down there. And I'm like, all right. As long as you're not passing anything, you're not passing anything that's restricting my freedoms anymore. I would prefer that nothing happen. I would prefer that the person I elect or the people that I elect go down there and create that deadlock so that my freedoms don't get any worse than they are right now. Above that, I would say go down there and get rid of all the garbage that's already there. Instead of passing new stuff, retract everything.
I think there's a tremendous amount.
There's so much that we can clean up.
Right.
Yeah, that we don't know and don't need.
Right. It should be like when you go shopping. You can't buy another knick-knack until you get one out of your house.
Exactly.
But there is so much that's on the books.
But that's one of my things is you know, if you're going down there to make a name for yourself, what I really want is for you to go down there and fight for me, which means deadlock that issue that is obviously bad for the whole country, and go after the people who put these other things in place in the first place.
That was the discussion last night. I was at a home party introducing myself, and somebody said, well, if you go down there and you stand your ground, you won't be elected again. Because D.C. won't want you back. But if I stand my ground and it's what the people want, the people will elect me again.
Right.
But you have to stand your ground because you have a right to know who you're voting for. You have a right to know where I stand. And if I say one thing and do another, I don't want to be that career politician. I don't want to go down there and just be worried about coming back. I want to be worried about doing the right thing.
And that's
if
what,
I lose
that's
that
what
job,
we
that's
really
okay.
need. We need an entire generation of people doing that.
And we shouldn't be down there 20 years.
So how do you feel about some of these things? How do you feel about term limits for Congress?
We always have this discussion.
Okay.
Term limits come up. I'm for and against, and this is why. I'm for term limits. My campaign manager, we always have this discussion. He goes, we shouldn't have term limits because people should vote out bad politicians. But people don't pay attention enough to vote them out. So I believe in term limits. I don't believe in what they're offering for term limits. Do you know what they're offering when you I signed a contract? I agree with term limits. Do you know what they offer?
What's that?
3 terms of Congress plus 2 terms of Senate. That's 18 years. That's better than 50.
But it's still a career politician.
It's still a career politician. That's why I say, yes, I do believe in term limits. I think 18 is too long.
So it's, would you say
3 of Congress, 2 of Senate.
So that's 6 years. 6 and 6. That's 18.
18 years. That's a long time.
It is a long time.
Especially when after 5 years you get full retirement and you get health insurance for life. Our veterans don't get that. That's something really wrong.
Well, see, I would look at more of it as a maybe a total. I don't know where I would compromise on that, because I see 3 2-year terms as a representative. That's not a long time.
Oh, it's 6 years.
You're just barely into 2 separate presidential cycles, right? I mean, if you're 6 years, you're not even there for the entire term of a 2-term president, right? Whereas, see, I would maybe take a total number, take like a 12 or 14-year total.
I haven't picked my total, but yes,
oh no,
I agree.
but like
18 is just too much.
let's say you do 12 or 14 years as a state rep. you can't then do 12 or 14 years as a senator. You're done. You've done your time, right? You take someone like Nancy Pelosi. How long has she been in the House? 30, 40 years?
Just way too long.
Right. Switching from one house to the other isn't a major jump. I mean, you can have power regardless of, right, and that's a big thing about them is their power. Same with Senate, but I think you should have at least enough time to
So
cover an entire presidential, two-term president, maybe even another one, so that you're crossing presidential. Because you want people in there that are experienced. You don't want a constant team of inexperienced legislators, because you do still want folks that
because otherwise, then you have all the aides who are writing the legislation.
Right, and a new president comes in. If a new president comes in and everybody in Congress on his side or in his party had aged out, and so everybody's brand new, then you have
a big learning curve.
Yeah, you're not going to get anything done. Right. You need to have experienced people in there. So I'm for term limits. I don't know what the number is.
I don't either.
I don't.
But I think 18 is too long.
I think 40 is too long.
I absolutely agree with that one.
I think mandatory retirement age might go to help. Maybe we don't do term limits. Maybe we start, right? And this is the way the Democrats do it. You take a little chunk at a time. But if you start with a mandatory retirement age.
Yeah, but look, Chris Pappas went in at what, 20, 22, whatever?
Right.
So he could retire, what, 65? That's 40 years.
Right. But on the other side of that, I never would have voted for a 22-year-old to go to Washington, because I don't think the human brain doesn't develop and mature until 26, 27. We don't have a full understanding of the world around us.
Well, he
until
started
then.
at state politics.
Right.
Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The maturity level, I don't care how much, you're running your own business and you've got a degree and whatnot. If you're 24 years old, you're still too young. Mm-hmm. There are still things about the world that you don't understand the greater impact, right? I don't care how well traveled you are, how well educated you are, or what jobs you had up to that point. There are some things that are age and experience related. So anyway, that's my thing on super young politicians. It's not that I don't like them. It's not that I won't vote for them but I just feel like the brain is not fully developed, and that is science, right? You want to talk about science and following the science. The human brain does not mature fully until 25, 26, right? You're still an adolescent. But yes, but then if you start too early, then you age out of the system. Right. Or you time out of the system. But we've got politicians that are having strokes in the middle of a...
That's why, as a geriatric psychiatric nurse practitioner, there's a role for me down there, whether you elect me or not.
Their handlers are as far as I'm concerned, they're on the hook for elder abuse.
Yes.
Right?
Joe Biden.
You let him go out there and do that? But what are you thinking?
You tell me Kamala Harris didn't know?
Well, we can go into... Yeah, and where's Joe been? He's been on the beach for 4 weeks now.
Yeah. A week in Rehoboth and a week in California, and who knows what before that.
Yeah.
But, and Rome is burning.
Yep. Kamala's in Portsmouth today.
I know. She was probably 2 miles from my shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. They bust them all in from Massachusetts, I guess.
They bust them all in? Do they have gymnasiums in New Hampshire that are small enough for her?
I think it was outdoor. It looked like it was outdoor. It was at a brewery.
Well, so people came for the beer, not...
Probably. You'd need to drink to hear that.
You see a lot of photographers out there and got their Photoshop ready to go?
I didn't go. I did see all the law enforcement, though. There was a lot of law enforcement.
Where did they? They must have gone into Pease.
Must have gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. 95 though was closed for a little while.
Yep. That was Pease. Yeah. So, So tell me what else. So I talked about term limits.
Yep.
Tell me about some of these other things. Big things that come out. Everybody calls it the Roe v. Wade, but that's not what it is. It's Jordan or something like
Dobbs.
that. Dobbs. Yeah. Tell us where you stand. I mean,
let's talk
you're
about
running.
it.
Yeah.
So,
and as a nurse, I know it. We haven't talked about this before. I know you're going to have a slightly different take
Yes.
on it, then
Well, because I spent my whole career at the end of life. So I really see
Exactly.
the sanctity of life, both ends. But I think the Supreme Court got it right, sending it back to the state. What we
and
need.
that's the thing that's perfect, because the rest of the media and the rest of the leftists want you to think that the Supreme Court outlawed it.
Right.
And that's not the case. It went back to the states, back to the states' rights things that I was talking about earlier.
And we, as Republicans, can't be afraid to engage in the conversation. We're afraid to engage in the conversation.
You're absolutely
But
right. We are. Because we don't want to get shouted
and
down.
as a mother and as a nurse, I feel like I'm fully armed to go into this conversation. So what we need to do is stop letting the Democrats fearmonger. We need to educate the voters to what we have, because they keep saying we have a ban. We don't have a ban. New Hampshire does not have a ban.
New Hampshire's
law is the
24
exact
weeks?
same.
24 weeks. It's
6 months.
Yeah.
So it's the exact same as Roe versus Wade. And New Hampshire's law was put into place 2 years before the Dobbs decision. They have full access, unlimited access to abortion up to 6 months for whatever reason, elective abortion. And then after that, for exception.
Emergencies, yeah.
Mother's life, fetal anomalies that are inconsistent with life.
And
but-
we had to go over that to the nth degree on this
But
show,
we need
because
to say
folks
that.
will not understand that. And we do need to say that. And you know what? I think we are saying it. And I think we've been saying it all along. The problem is the mainstream media is not allowing that to get out there.
No, and they keep fear-mongering, and people are voting on fear. They don't, we don't have a ban. And you hear that, the Democrats who are running for governor, ban the abortion ban, the abortion ban. We don't have one. But people hear that, and they don't listen to both sides of the media, so they don't know that. We need to educate. That's what I find. As I go around.
How do you think we'll get there? We
have
don't
to
have control of the media conglomerates.
We have to be not afraid to engage in the conversation. When I went on WMUR, they asked me the same question. They gave me the space to talk about it, and talk about that we don't have a ban, and talk about what is on the books here in New Hampshire. And I have to say, they didn't edit it to only a little clip. They played the whole piece of it. But whatever opportunity we have, we need to educate the voter on all issues, not just abortion. People are not informed. You were preaching to the choir, of course, but the mass amount of voters are not informed.
We're not going to talk about it, but we had another school shooting today.
Yes.
That is inevitably going to bring up the leftists. They're going to start within 24 hours. They're going to start politicizing this, right? Even though they're the ones who are always saying we're not going to politicize it, but they're going to start politicizing it. But aside from that, another big GOP issue is firearms, Second Amendment. So tell us, and we're in the live free or die state.
Right.
So.
And I'm fully in support of the Second Amendment. I am a gun owner myself. I believe in the right to bear arms. I think the issue really is a mental health issue. That's what this whole thing with the shooting, and that we keep seeing crisis. I don't believe in red flag laws.
Good.
I don't believe
Red
in
flag laws scare the bejesus out of me.
There's no
because
due
the red flag law
process.
isn't just about the Second Amendment. A red flag law, if something like that exists, it can exist for any condition, right? And what is it? Walls. He instituted the snitch on your neighbor program during COVID.
Doesn't that sound like a Nazi?
Right, exactly. And so that's what a red flag law is to me, is this snitch. If something like that is allowed to exist, anybody can accuse anybody of anything and just destroy your life.
Right. And there's no due process to get off that list.
I don't think you ever do. I mean, they say that you do. Folks who try to pass these laws. Thankfully, every time that came through, it was either shot down in the state legislature or it was vetoed by Sununu. But I'm telling you, they're going to try.
It's
They're
mental
gonna
health.
try.
We need to address the mental health crisis.
It absolutely is, and we can even see that it's always been mental health, right? You got to start with the folks who are prone to self-harm, and you've got to take seriously, anyone who makes threats, no matter how idle they are. But there's education too.
Yes.
Right? I'm a member of a local gun club. I'm constantly taking a new class. But aside from just taking class, there's the education in the home, right? I remember being, this tall. Son, you don't touch that. Right?
Responsible gun owner.
And when you're old enough, I'll teach you how to use it, right? And you can go on and you can see pictures of schoolhouses. You can see pictures of kids, 10-year-olds, in the 60s, being taught firearm safety in a classroom in school, right? My first high school that I went to, I was a Navy brat. Everybody knows my first high school I went had a shooting range in the basement of the main building. We had a shooting range at the high school. People would show up to high school with a .22 rifle slung on their back because they were members of the shooting team, right? And being from New England, when hunting season comes around, you go out the parking lot at the school, right? And there's gun rack in every pickup truck out there because folks are going hunting before and after school. We lived through that, and we didn't have constant shootings. We didn't have all of this, the school shootings and the mass shootings that
it's a mental health crisis.
It's education, it's mental health, it always has been that, and we can look back in history and say, hey, we got to this point in history without having to deal with this. What has happened since then? And we need to address that.
As a psychiatric nurse, I would prescribe quite a bit of medication. But and I would say to people, I'll give you antidepressants, but it's not going to take away your problems. It's only going to give you the mental energy to deal with them, and you still need to do the work. And people don't want to do the work.
Exactly. I'm not you specifically, but some of that actually led to some of the drug crisis. Is the over-medicating for all kinds of different conditions. What do you feel about that? What do you feel about the big drug companies? You coming from the medical industry, what do you tell us?
So I stopped prescribing. Well, I stopped seeing patients just during COVID because people didn't want you in the house, me in the house during COVID. But prior to that, probably a good 5 years before that, I really started to reassess. I treated people with dementia and depression along with dementia. But I would prescribe some heavy-duty antipsychotics and antidepressants and anti-anxiety. And I thought, we're medicating symptoms to treat, and then we're treating symptoms, and then we're treating symptoms. And sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Sometimes it's behavioral, and it's environmental. We need to fix the environment for some people, and that decreases their anxiety and their depression. But I really think the fact that Big Pharma can advertise, sell directly to patients.
Right on the television.
Right. And
there's a reason why they told cigarette manufacturers that they couldn't advertise on television anymore. That was in the 80s. I don't. Right.
Oh, I remember. I'm older than you. I remember.
We started making these rules, but then we started allowing them to start talking about painkillers and antidepressants and ask your doctor about XYZ. And they're trying to sell these drugs. It's like they're all drug dealers.
And then the patient comes in, I want this drug, I want this drug. And then it's also mandated by your insurance company. You can't have this one until you've tried this one, or you failed on this one. You have to fail twice on different drugs.
Tell me about that. Tell me about healthcare. Tell me about insurance companies, and what do you feel about
So I think we need to allow for
socialized medicine.
So I think I think we need not to have a single payer insurance. No,
Okay.
I'm not for single payer insurance. But what we need to do is to allow multiple insurance agencies to come in and have a fair open market, and that will bring down costs. Because right now we are really restricted in New Hampshire on the number of providers, insurance providers that we have here. So the market is really tight. We need to allow across the country insurance carriers to have access across the country.
And so what's in place that prevent that? Well, for instance, I work from home, write software, but I work for a company that's based out in Seattle. I'm on their healthcare plan. I'm on a West Coast Blue Cross plan.
And are you getting coverage here?
And I am getting coverage here as though it were in network,
That
right?
must
Because
it's their plan allows that.
right. And that's not the first case. I've worked for multiple different employers where that was the case, where I'm on a healthcare plan that's not native to New Hampshire. Right. So what's in place that prevents that from coming in?
I believe that's federal, but I'm not really sure, but that needs to be addressed.
So these are just regional centers then?
Right. So even our insurance restricts which hospitals we can go to in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, which hospitals in Maine, and I have employees across the board.
Right.
So we have to,
because you're in the construction business,
we're in the
right?
construction business, and we're right on the seacoast. So my employees live right over the border.
And you've got workers that are going up into Maine and coming in from Maine, Massachusetts. Yep.
And then you tie it into the cost, the escalating cost, and under Obamacare, if you don't have insurance, you get penalized. If you don't sign up for Medicare, you get penalized. But we're giving free medical care to illegal immigrants on the backs of our veterans. That's not right.
You just go and change your name to, a Mexican name, a Spanish name, and get yourself some free health care.
Right. And so the cost of our...
That's my conspiracy theory. Don't try it.
But so our insurance carrier sent out a notice saying that two of the hospitals that they cover in New Hampshire, their cost of care has gone up, I think it was like 25%. And they're wondering if they'll continue to cover those two hospitals. And partially due to uncompensated medical care.
Yeah.
Tell me where that...
I don't understand how the insurance companies, and maybe it's because of the limited system, the insurance companies are able to get away with this. But if you've ever gotten a bill, you can see that the insurance company refused, they were billed $1,000. The insurance company allowed $400. The insurance company paid $400, and the net is zero. So the hospital didn't come and bill me the other $600. They said, okay, you got us. It's only $400, and we'll take it.
That's their negotiated rate.
Right. But if I didn't have insurance, I would have been billed by the hospital for $1,000. And they would have taken me to collections over it. They would not have negotiated with me down to the actual rate, down to the rate that actually keeps them fluid, and that annoys me. Right.
So
there's a local manufacturer that makes orthopedic soft goods, right? Braces for arms, necks, knees, ankles after surgery and whatnot, and they sell all of their orthopedic soft goods to hospitals all over the country, including local hospitals, the VA and Elliott and CMC. And what happens is after a surgery or after an injury, the doctor will go into the closet and grab the correct brace that this patient needs, give it to the patient, and they will bill the insurance company $500 for this brace. Well, because I happen to be connected to a manufacturer of that brace, I know that brace cost the hospital $25, and it only costs $10 to manufacture.
It's like getting a Tylenol in the hospital.
So how are they getting away with this, right? We all know it's happening, but we're all putting up with it.
Right. They'll say,
I'll
just assume that they're justifying it with, my R&D costs that much. But for instance, so medication. Medication's very expensive, right?
Well, what I'm saying is the manufacturer is not charging that much. It's the doc,
middleman.
it's the hospital that's charging the $500. The hospital bought it from the manufacturer for $25. Yeah. Right? That's a real scenario. So that bugs me as a consumer, and it bugs me as someone who is familiar with the manufacturing process for these things. So that's the insurance system. It's just out of control as far as I.
Yes. Yes. That needs to be addressed. Yes. The other piece is so medications are so expensive, right?
Well, the same process with the meds.
Right. So when I went to Sierra Leone and worked in the amputee camps, we would the company, the agency that I went over with, would ship over medication. They would get all this donated medication, brand name, that was expensive, that I couldn't get samples for my patients, and they couldn't afford to get because their insurance wouldn't cover it. But we're getting all this donated free medical care going to Africa.
Right, because it's not going someplace where they think they can get money out of somebody.
And 91% of our generic medication is made in India and China. We need to bring that manufacturing back. We need to have better control of it.
So it's cheap to manufacture over there. They have fewer controls.
Correct.
Obviously, if you're the buyer, you're going to put your controls in there for international shipping. The FDA obviously is regulating that, but on the other hand, the equipment, the people that are manufacturing, they're very inexpensive. So that's one thing that's.
So
how do we do that? Do we put tariffs on that stuff and make them do it here? I mean,
encourage them to reshore. We encourage them to reshore, and then we will bring down the cost of manufacturing.
How do you do that? Is it because
Taxes.
you put tariffs on incoming goods?
Yeah,
I mean that's one of Trump's methodologies. Is you put the tariffs on there so that it costs that much more to import it, and it's cheaper to make it here.
Right. We make the taxes more inducive to bringing back manufacturing, and we have to lower energy costs. We have to make it so that we are manufacturing friendly.
I think that's step one to whether it's manufacturing drugs or cars or anything that
Steel.
we're importing.
I've been fighting for years for Buy American.
Right. I mean, what happened to all our steel mills in Pittsburgh and whatnot, right?
So Trump, thankfully, he heard that the steel industry was hurting, and he put tariffs on imported steel. But the foreign agents are very, very slick. So when the tariffs were going into place, I would get emails probably 10 times a week. Buy Chinese steel.
Before the tariffs?
While they were talking about putting them in, and then during. Buy Chinese steel. We will ship it to another country, change the container, change the bill of lading, and bring you Chinese steel. No, I don't buy Chinese steel. I only buy American, and there are a few sizes that aren't rolled domestically. We buy them in Europe, but that's what they did to try and get around the tariffs.
But they actually said it out loud?
In their emails.
Nice.
Yeah. And then what also happens is if you bring in steel under the import code of raw material that was being tariffed, now you punch a hole in it. You tack a plate on it. It's no longer raw material coming into that
because
import
it's been finished. It's been fabricated. Yep.
So we were getting. China was transshipping through.
So they're
Canada.
still getting around it by taking, instead of being raw material, as long as they modify it somehow.
It comes under.
Cut a piece off.
So I've been fighting for 2 decades for Buy American, for anything that's permanently installed in a building that is publicly funded, because every dollar, like I said before, federal government doesn't make money, they take our money. Our public dollars are supposed to be for our communities, to stimulate our communities. So if it's public construction with public dollars, it has to be domestically fabricated, because Canada has been attacking this fabricated structural steel industry since NAFTA. And we've been fighting them since NAFTA. But now it's just gotten, since probably 2010, 2015, it's gone exponential. They have targeted New England, Mid-Atlantic, and Florida, New York, Canadian steel. I sit on the board of the American Institute of Steel Construction. We had a federal trade case against China, Mexico, and Canada for unfairly traded structural steel, fabricated structural steel. This was after the Trump.
There are certain things like that, and depending on the use of the steel, what its ultimate fabricated thing is going to be, whether it's a building or whatnot, there are things like that concern me about the quality of something coming from overseas as well. Do you have trouble with that as well?
So yes,
right.
There was
I would think that American steel that was meant for American buildings, Americans making the steel would be much more cognizant of what its end goal is than someone in China.
Our steel is the cleanest steel, and it's amazing because much of our steel here is electric arc, which is a much lower carbon emission than like the blast furnace, the coal blast furnaces. But we still have some. China, coal blast.
Oh yeah, all of
dirty,
it.
dirty.
Yeah.
But so when
they're one of the largest. I think they're still the largest polluter in the world, right? Because
China,
they don't have the green rules that we're putting in place
they're not
that's
considered
stifling
a developed country.
Our ability.
Right.
Yep.
So they're under different guidelines. So when China was sending over shipments of raw material, so they were sending one certification for each. We usually get one certification per beam. They know who made that beam. They know the content of the beam. I mean, that follows it from cradle to the job site. We can tell you. They would send over a whole shipment of steel, a whole container full with one cert. That's not right. We here in this country have great ability to track. So I went down to Nucor, which is doing fabulous stuff for down in Arkansas, structural steel mill. And from the time it's being mixed, the molten steel is being mixed, and they know where it's going, what job it's going to, and what fabricator it's being delivered to. And they can track that one beam all the way along till it hits my shop, until it hits the job site in Boston or wherever. That's what we want. We want that accountability, and we have that here in this country. We have that ability to do that.
Yeah, I think bringing all of that back into the United States, the key is energy. I think that's the key.
Absolutely.
Is the pipelines, the drilling,
all forms,
allowing coal, and man, we got to ramp up on nuclear.
Yeah.
You know, people are scared. You know, there's been 3 major incidents on the planet in the 50 plus years of nuclear energy, 60 plus years of nuclear energy. There's been 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima, right? And 3 Mile Island, in comparison, is very minor compared to the other 2. In fact, we're still, I believe, getting energy out of one of the reactors over there. But that is the cleanest, most efficient.
Green?
Yeah, exactly. Type of energy. We need to get all of that. Once energy starts coming down, and once we get rid of this EV mandates.
We shouldn't be picking winners and losers. There is a need, there is a place for greener renewables, but not in our lifetime. Will we be completely dependent on it? Let's be completely energy independent from a position of strength, build the infrastructure that supports that, and then control the transition.
During the Trump years, we were exporting oil.
I know.
For crying out loud. I need my politicians to understand that and support that.
Energy drives our economy. It drives our transportation, it drives our manufacturing, it drives our cost of goods, and it drives down kitchen table issues.
Yes. Once all that's here, it'll bring back all kinds of manufacturing jobs.
Yes.
And we'll ramp up new ones. So, all right, we're at the end of the hour. That was very quick, Holly.
Thank you.
Quickly, tell us where we can get in touch with you, get information about you, and find out what your schedule is to see you in other places before the election.